So Daniel has prayed to God about the restoration of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And God has answered by saying, actually, the Jerusalem you're praying for is actually going to be no more.
Yeah.
But prior to that will be raised up
Yeah.
a prince who will actually not only save a remnant, but will be salvation for the whole world.
Exactly that. Yeah.
So in other words, it's a classic example of God going, it's bigger than you think.
It's bigger than you think.
Oh,
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for joining us once again on the All Nations Church podcast. It's still season 7. We're still diving into the book of Daniel. I'm James Aubrey, joined by Kier Adams.
Hello.
And Chris Hamer-Hodges.
Hi.
And we trust that you have enjoyed and appreciated, and most of all, understood the episodes that we've done so far. We've arrived in the second half of Daniel. We've been talking about visions. We've been talking about how we understand biblical symbolism, a little bit around biblical numbers. Chris was very helpful in reminding us not all numbers in the Bible are significant, which is a good lesson of itself. And we've just, in our last episode, had a fantastic ride through Daniel chapter 7, which is one of the most important chapters in the whole Bible, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Not only in terms of how it frames history in between Daniel's day and the coming of Christ, but the way in which it paints so clearly for us a picture of the relationship between God the Father and God the Son, which we explored on our Discovering God podcast with Roger, but also the sovereignty of God over human history, the rule and reign of God over everything, including, as Chris so beautifully painted for us in the last episode, even the fires of hell.
Yeah.
Everything is under God's rule and command. Yeah. And we arrive in our next section in Daniel chapter 8.
Yep.
Which is a vision that Daniel has. It's a vision with a specific geographical focus, isn't it? He's actually moved geographically, either in the vision or to have the vision, depending on how you want to read it. So do you want to recap for us? We're making your job harder each time, basically, Chris. But you're rising to the occasion each time. How would you recap and describe the events of Daniel chapter 8?
So Daniel chapter 8, I would give it the summary of the vision of the ram and the goat. That, if you like, is the high-level view.
Yep.
So it's another one of Daniel's visions. It involves two animals again, which represent two kingdoms again. And again, we don't need to speculate about the meaning, because very helpfully, if you read to the end of Daniel chapter 8, you get the meaning explained. In fact, it's Gabriel who comes and interprets the vision to.
Is this the first time we've met Gabriel in the scriptures?
Yes. Yeah.
This is the first time we meet Gabriel.
This is the first time we meet Gabriel. Gabriel's only ever sent to 3 people in the scriptures: to Mary, to Elizabeth, and to Daniel.
Wow.
Gosh.
And in fact, there are only 2 angels who are named in the scriptures, who we know, messengers of God, sent as heralds of God's purpose, who have names that we know in the scriptures. That's Gabriel and Michael. And another fact that is significant about Daniel is he's the only one who encounters them both.
He does, that's right.
Yeah.
And they've all got this L in their name, haven't they? Daniel, Gabriel,
yes,
Michael.
L means God.
Yes, they've all got names that mean similar things.
Means something about God. Yeah, so Daniel has this vision about the ram and the goat, and so if we go back to our prophetic timeline that we've laid out, so we saw about the head of gold and the chest and arms of silver, belly and thigh of bronze, and legs of iron, and then we saw how that corresponded to the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the terrifying beast. So here we're kind of zooming in just on the transition between the silver and the bronze, between the chest and the arms and the belly and the thigh, or between the bear and the leopard, because we're told that the ram represents the kingdoms of the Medes and the Persian Empire. And we're told, which helps give us context all the way back, how did we know that it was the Greek Empire? Because here we're explicitly told that the goat with its very prominent horn represents the kingdom of Greece.
Okay.
So the bear and the leopard have become the ram and the goat.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So we're seeing not the whole timeline, but as you said, just a zoomed in vision on the next transition, because Daniel starts off in the head of gold, and he finds himself, at the end of Belshazzar's feast, transitioning into the Medo-Persian Empire, and here we find him in the Medo-Persian Empire being given this kind of detailed vision of the next transition, which will be the Medo-Persian Empire will give way to the Greek Empire, which happened under the extraordinary fast conquest of Alexander the Great. So we see that symbolized in the fact that this ram with two horns, the two horns representing the Mede and the Persian kingdom, meets this goat with one prominent horn that comes over the earth at great speed.
And the Medes and the Persians, so the Medes came first, but the Persians were kind of greater, so they were...
Yeah, that's why it was a lopsided
similar
kingdom.
cultures.
Yeah,
is that right?
Similar time, yeah.
I heard someone compare it recently to, if we look back on history and imagined a British-American empire. Is that kind of a fair analogy in terms of similar culture?
I've
and
not
kind of
looked into the specific dynamic between the Medes and the Persians, but yes, it was a lopsided.
And we're talking Persia, we're talking kind of modern day Iran, aren't we?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the centre would have been modern day Baghdad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, so we see it being charged down by the goat with this one prominent horn, and so we know from history that Alexander the Great, as a young man, had conquered all of the known world by the time he was 32. In fact, he died at the age of 32, having pretty much subdued and conquered all the world as it was known at that point. And then we're told that the horn was broken off, and 4 prominent horns grew in its place. And again, we know from history that when Alexander died, his kingdom, he didn't have a clear successor. There were a couple of he had an unborn child, and he had a second brother who had severe learning disabilities, and so neither were a suitable heir, and so his kingdom ended up being divided amongst his generals, who then fought amongst each other, and would eventually become the kings of the north and the south, which we come to them later.
Yeah. Right. So we've got it clear now. So the ram represents the Medo-Persian Empire.
Yeah.
Goat represents the Greek Empire.
Yeah.
We've met these before in the vision of the man that Nebuchadnezzar has in his dream.
Yeah.
We've met them before as the bear and the leopard in Daniel chapter 7.
Yeah.
Now Daniel has been living in Babylon since he was a teenager and taken off there.
Yeah.
Now he's specific in this vision that he's taken in this vision somewhere else. So either I don't know how you read it, as in it's a vision he has, or if he goes there. I don't know either, to be honest with you. But that he's taken in the vision to Media Persia, effectively, isn't he? He's taken to Susa or Elam.
Yeah, that's right. He kind of sees it. I think it's he's taken in vision, because there's quite a strong parallel between some of Ezekiel's visions where he's listed off, actually, and he's taken to the Ulai Canal, and he sees the visions there, and other times where he's taken in a vision and taken back to Jerusalem, where he sees the desecration of the temple that's going on. So I would see it in that similar way. That he's not moving.
He's not geographically there.
Not geographically, but
helpful.
God is kind of showing him by taking him as if he was there and showing him what's going on in this picture form.
We know that the great horn is of Greece's Alexander.
Yes.
Do we have a clue who the little horn is that that I nearly said Little Bighorn, then that would have been entirely different realm of
Yeah,
history.
yeah.
Do you know who the Little Horn is of Greece?
Yes. So the little horn comes up again when we look at the kings of the north and the south. So again, we've got quite a few visions
Repetitions and
that
parallels.
are parallels, and so there's a bit of time compacting going on.
Yeah.
So it gets expanded much more in the vision of the kings of the north and the south. So, but basically, there was a little horn, or it says later, this contemptible person who arises and makes war on the saints and casts down the stars from heaven. And it talks later about setting up the abomination of desecration. So historically, that has most clearly been identified with a gentleman called Antiochus Epiphanes,
Right.
who came from the kingdom of the north, the Seleucid Empire. So Seleucus was one of Alexander's generals who formed his own satrapy and then kingdom in the north. So taking into account the old Babylonian and Persian domains, and one from his line, this guy Antiochus Epiphanes, came in and caused trouble for the people of God who were left in Jerusalem. As we find out later in when we look at the north and the south, Israel and Jerusalem is kind of caught straight in the middle between these two conflicting powers. And Antiochus did some pretty horrendous things, including desecrating the temple.
So when in Daniel 8 we talk, there's this picture of the starry host being thrown down.
Yeah.
That's to do with this gentleman, and how do you say his name?
Antiochus
Epiphanes.
Epiphanes, yeah.
So what does that, when the Bible talks about the starry host being thrown down, what does that represent?
Yeah, because we see this in a number of prophetic writings. In Revelation, it talks about the dragon who swept a third of the stars out of the heavens. It says on the last day that the stars will fall from the sky. And that's quite a hard one to interpret, because we know that the stars, as a physicist, I know that the stars are huge balls of gas, many light years away, and it kind of boggles the understanding to think how they can fall from the sky literally. But when we realise that, as with most of these visions, they are symbolic, and the stars are representing the heavenly powers, or in particular the people of God, because if you go back to the promise that was made to Abraham, when God takes him outside and says, "Look up at the stars, if you can count them, so shall your offspring be," that there then becomes this theme throughout the scriptures that stars also represent the heavenly people of God, that he leads them out by a flock. He knows them each by name because of his great power and might. Not one of them is missing. It's really powerful, this vision of the stars, that they shine in the darkness, and just as we shine with the light that we have. We know that before Christ returns, it doesn't mean that it's all going to be rosy. Darkness will increase, but just as on the darkest night you see this manifestation of God's glory filling the entire heavens, where each star has its place to shine and has its assigned part in the place that God's put it for. There's like a reflection on the earth where God, the church, are like the display of God's wisdom to the heavens, and we each all have our place, that even in the darkness we shine with his light. And so the stars being swept from the sky is talking about where it talks about he made war on the saints. It's talking about the death of God's people.
Okay. So this is a kind of a real tragic scene and a real significant warning that Daniel's giving.
Yeah.
which perhaps explains why right at the end of the chapter it says that he's sick and not
Yeah,
working.
that's right. Yeah.
This kind of really significantly affects him, doesn't it?
Yeah, because he's seeing a future massacre of his own people.
Yeah. He also talks about numbers.
Yes.
Not 3.5 this time.
No.
But 2,300 evenings and mornings.
Yes.
Now that's the kind of number that numerologists would obsess
love.
over.
Yeah.
So is that just there as a number, or do you think there's some significance to that one?
There is some significance, but it comes with a caveat.
Okay.
So it's quite easy to see it generally, but it's quite hard to fit it exactly without doing a bit of Carol Vorderman and taking one from the middle and one from the bottom. And I think you're always in dangerous territory when you get there. Just as a context, if anyone is interested in the events that happen at the end of Daniel chapter 8 or in the middle of Daniel chapter 11, where Antiochus Epiphanes fulfills some of these prophecies and particularly make the making war on the saints and the stopping of the daily sacrifice, the 2,300 evening and morning, then it's worth reading the first few chapters of the book of Maccabees. Okay. So the book of Maccabees is an apocryphal book, so you don't need to be scared of that. All it basically means is it's not the inspired word of God. Okay. So don't read it with the same authority. But it doesn't mean that everything in it is incorrect or unhelpful, or if you read it, you're going to get cursed or become a heretic. So it's quite useful. The first 4 chapters of First Maccabees detail what Antiochus Epiphanes did. Okay. And they tell us the dates. So he stopped the evening and morning sacrifice on the 15th of Kislev in, I forget the year, something like 150 something. And Judas Maccabees, who is the kind of hero of the book of Maccabees, after which the story is, he was a Jewish hero who led the revolt against the Seleucian and Antiochus Epiphanes, and eventually rededicated the temple and restored the daily sacrifice. That happened 3 years later on the 25th of Kislev. So that's 3 years and 10 days. And it's evening and morning. So if you use the Babylonian system, where it's an approximate solar calendar of 360 days, multiply by 3, add 10, multiply by 2, you get within 60 of that 2,300 number. So I think that's probably as far as you need to go. It represents the 3 and a bit years for which the daily Jewish rite or ritual, that they were instructed in God's law to offer a sacrifice every morning and every evening. So that's the number of those morning and evening sacrifices that were missed. Why there are 60 missing is a subject of much speculation and probably not that helpful. But just for full disclosure, the exact number, if you use all those dates, you're short by 60. Some have speculated that you have to take into account the leap years where you add an extra month. Others have said that perhaps it's the other sacrifices as well as just the morning and evening ones, but it's quite hard to get the exact figure. But
the sum of Genesis 8, of Daniel 8, would be that God is speaking to Daniel about the transition from the Medo-Persian Empire to the Greek Empire.
That's right.
Predicting the rise and subsequent fall of Alexander the Great.
Yes.
Predicting the rise of a king from his line, from the Seleucid line.
Yeah.
That will do great harm to the people of God.
Yes.
And that in order to help Daniel understand this vision, God sends Gabriel. To meet him and explain it to him. Yeah, that's right. Good. That's an effective summary. That's a really good summary, yeah. Shall we jump into chapter 9 then, where Gabriel makes his second appearance? We can kind of tie these two chapters together because both of them involve a visit from Gabriel. Yes, indeed. It also involves Daniel, the man of prayer, once again showing himself to be a phenomenal warrior, prayer warrior.
I think Daniel, the start of, again, Daniel 9 is a chapter of two halves.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
The first half, you get Daniel's prayer, which is worthy of study in its own right, because I think it's one of the greatest recorded prayers in the scripture, and shows a lot about Daniel's character.
Yeah.
You know, we've met Daniel and we've unpacked it, that he's a man almost without fault, and yet when you see him interceding on behalf of his people, he doesn't say, you know, they have sinned. It's
no, he says we have sinned.
We have sinned. We have fallen short. We have transgressed the covenant. It also shows that Daniel had a great devotional life, not just in prayer but in study of the word. Because
that's true. Yes.
Because he said that in the very first year of Darius, he discovered from the scriptures, according to the prophecy of Jeremiah, that the exile would last 70 years. So you imagine yourself, you were a young man, you're now an old man, you've been in exile for 68 years, and you've just seen this kind of cataclysmic change of empire where the Babylonians have fallen and the Medo-Persians. You can see why it drove him to prayer. Yeah. It's like he must have had an expectation that this was it. Yeah. This was going to be the end. With the fall of Babylon was going to be the restoration, and yet it wasn't happening. And so Daniel's response was to pray God's word back to him and say, you know, you promised it would be 70 years.
And this is Limestone territory as well. This is exactly the same time as Limestone
That's
territory,
right.
isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So we don't know the gap. But, well, chapter 8 and 9, we've got third year of Belshazzar to the first year of Darius. So we don't know how long, maybe you know, but how long the gap is.
No.
But yeah, that first year of Darius' reign seems to be incredibly significant.
Indeed.
Daniel goes through the biggest challenge and trial of his life.
Yeah. While
praying probably the most important prayers he's prayed in his life.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and then receiving probably his most significant revelation.
Yes.
And one of the most mysterious, because the second half is the 77s, which again is because it's one of those numbers that's difficult to interpret. It means it's been interpreted just about any way
absolutely
you can think of.
So like you say, so we get this first half where Daniel prays to God because of he's had this revelation from the prophet Jeremiah.
Yeah.
That do you think Daniel will have? Is there any chance Daniel will have known or met Jeremiah? Will they have crossed paths at all?
Unlikely, I think.
Unlikely. It's a shame we can't do any speculation on that.
Yeah.
Then the second half we have Gabriel arriving, and he effectively gives this vision to Daniel. Can you kind of give us a recap of that vision that Gabriel brings to Daniel? Yes.
So the vision is about this mysterious 77s. He said 77s are ordained to seal prophecy, to fulfill righteousness, to see the cutting off of the anointed one, and then he goes on to talk about the different divisions of the 70s. There'll be these number of sevens, and then these number of sevens, and then a final seven, and it all seems quite mysterious and difficult to understand, and it takes a bit of unpicking.
Would you like to try and pick it for us?
Yeah. So this is what I think. So again, one of the best principles that we've looked at before is to allow the scriptures to interpret themselves. Yeah. And we've already come across 7. Remember, we said not all numbers are in the scriptures are significant, but 7 is one of those numbers, one of those heavenly numbers, the number of the Son, the number of completeness, the number of perfection, the number of something brought to its fullness. And 70 we encounter at the very start of the chapter, so we don't actually need to go that far to see the significance of 170, because it was 170 that drove Daniel to prayer. So instead of thinking of 77s, which is quite hard to understand. I like to just turn it around because in multiplication it's the same thing. To think of 770s.
Okay.
So Daniel went to God with a question about 170, and that 70 represent the restoration of his nation, the Jewish nation. And God's answer to him was about a sevenfold 70, a completeness of restoration,
Right.
a restoration of all things that would come through the fulfilling of prophecy and the cutting off of an anointed one and the fulfilling of all righteousness.
Wow.
And when you take that and then remember that the person who's telling him all this is Gabriel, we see that something that initially seemed really opaque and difficult to understand actually is telling us something that all the scriptures are telling us about. It's about Jesus.
Yeah.
I find this amazing that God's response to Daniel's prayer about tell me about the restoration of the Jewish nation. God says, well, my purpose is actually bigger than that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you
Well-
about the restoration of all peoples,
All things,
nations,
yeah.
tribes, and tongues. A sevenfold 70
Yeah.
that's
Which
going
is
to come
just like
through.
God, isn't it?
Yeah,
To
it's-
answer your question in a way that you weren't expecting.
yeah, with an even bigger
Yeah.
question. But there is some significance in the numbers themselves, because at this point, Daniel was about 500 years BC, and 770s, 400, a span of 490. So if you take that it begins from the giving of the proclamation under King Darius, and that if each of the 770s or the 490s represent a year, it predicts almost to the exact year the date when Jesus was crucified, the anointed one was cut off to
Wow.
fulfill all prophecy and to fulfill righteousness. So it really is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
So Gabriel comes to Daniel.
Yeah,
Daniel's praying about the restoration of Jerusalem,
yeah,
and God's response is, let me tell you that, in our words, let me tell you that the Messiah is coming. He's going to die and be raised from the dead,
yeah,
and all things will be reconciled.
yes,
Wow.
yeah.
It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful that Daniel was legitimate in his concern for his people, but God's response is to include him in his eternal kingdom purpose.
So the anointed one,
Yeah,
the prince in 925, you would
Yeah.
see that as the
I
Christ.
see that as Christ. Yeah,
Yeah. And then 62 weeks would be the time that we're living in, and then the week would be the coming, his second coming, or have I read that? I'm kind of
well,
not sure how
it's
to read that.
interesting. Yeah, the last 7 is interesting, and I think it does kind of stand alone.
Okay.
But I would see it not as pertaining to the end times, but to the Jewish
AD
end
70.
times, AD 70.
Thank you. Gotcha.
It's
Yeah.
significant that AD 70 happened right in the middle of the Jewish revolt,
Yeah.
which is often known as the 7-Year War.
Yeah.
So the last days of the Jewish nation, before they were wiped out by the Romans under Vespasian and Titus, was a 7-year rebellion. And right in the middle of that, in the 3.5 years, was AD 70, when Jerusalem was sacked and the city was burnt. And I think that fits quite nicely with the details as described in that 7.
So Daniel has prayed to God about the restoration of Jerusalem,
Yeah,
and God has answered by saying, actually, the Jerusalem you're praying for is actually going to be no more.
yeah,
But prior to that will be raised up
yeah,
a prince
Yeah.
who will actually not only save a remnant, but will be salvation for the whole world.
Exactly that. Yeah.
So in other words, it's a classic example of God going, it's bigger than you think.
It's bigger than you think.
Oh,
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, God's amazing like that, isn't he?
He is.
Just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Amazing.
Absolutely amazing. Chris, this has been absolutely fantastic. Again, thank you. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up with those two visions.
Yep.
Although we've got 3 chapters left of
Yep.
the Book of Daniel, they very much come as a package.
They do, yes.
So we're going to do our best to try and do that in one final episode to see how we go. But that was absolutely outstanding. Once again, thank you very much. And
You're
it's
welcome.
such an encouragement to remember God's in control of human history.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of human history is actually working towards his purpose and plan.
Yeah.
And the God of heaven is our God.
Yeah.
Amen.
Hears and
Amen.
answers prayer, loves to be prayed to.
Yeah.
And I also love the fact, just if you've shown us at the end, God's purpose in whenever God is revealing history
Yeah.
to his people,
Yeah.
like with Daniel, his priority is revealing Christ and the purpose of God in history.
Yes, the ultimate
It's
purpose.
not about predicting wars and famines and
No.
earthquakes. It's all moving towards, let me show you my purpose, and therefore let me
Yes.
show you my son.
Yeah.
So helpful. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
See you again. Thanks, folks.